Hello, and welcome back to the Okanagan Reader. I'm your host, Jim Bowering. I promised I would reveal the location of my last remote video, so here it is. The camera was looking south from the Fairview historical site. Probably kicking yourselves now, aren't you? Today I have another challenge for my local audience. Have a look. You have a clue. It's morning time, so we're looking west. Quite a few grapes growing out there nowadays, hey? Okay. Put your thinking caps on, as they say, and see if you can get that one. Put your guesses in, and I will reveal the answer next time. There goes a car. You would think. Never mind. Today I have a chapter 35 of the Green Comet, which is the first book in the Green Comet trilogy. And in chapter 35, Elgin can't understand how anyone could not realize that Fran was right. Before I started this recording, there were no cars for a long time. I guess that's just our luck, eh? Okay. I couldn't realize that Fran was right. We see the first appearance of Elgin's legendary face. They play a flashball game and use Elgin's Fractal for the first time. Go ahead. Nobody here but us chickens. And it's also the first appearance of a smasher. You might like the smasher when you meet it. Interesting little thing. Okay, so that's the introduction to 35. That's your answer to the last location mystery, and I'll give you another look at today's location mystery. Remember, we're looking west, standing in the early morning sun. Okay. Here we go then.
Chapter 35, Elgin's Fractal. Elgin couldn't believe it. Only half of the people seemed to agree with Frances. After everything she showed them, half of them still couldn't see that she was right. He thought she had them for a while. As she was speaking, he could see it in their faces. But then Winston took his turn, and they seemed to forget. All their work, all of Fran's work, undone by a few words from Winston. "How could he do that?" he said. "Who?" asked Fran. They were having breakfast on the balcony. "Winston," he said. "Surely he must know you're right. How could he say what he did?" "That's the essence of debating," she said. "Even if he did agree with us, it's his duty to debate his side to the best of his ability." "Are you saying he doesn't agree with us?" Elgin couldn't imagine how an intelligent man like Winston could be so wrong and so sure of himself. "Yes, I am. I think Winston truly believes what he said." Elgin had to accept that because it had the music in it. The music he was grudgingly having to accept that no one else could hear. Well, he could hear it, and he knew she was right. But this wasn't just a case of who was right and who was wrong. This was about the survival of Green Comet. If they couldn't convince enough people, then they were all going to die. There could be no satisfaction in everyone knowing they were right then. He got up and stepped to the edge of the balcony. "Where are you going?" asked Fran. "I'm going to talk to him." "Who, Winston?" "Yes, I've got to show him that you're right." He jumped. "Okay," she called after him, "but remember, he's doing what he thinks is best for the comet." Elgin thought about that on his way to the meeting room, where he hoped to catch Winston getting to work. Doing what he thinks is best for the comet? Of course he knew it was true. He didn't even need Fran to tell him so. Everyone knew that Winston devoted himself to the comet with a sense of honor. Obviously, he was doing what he thought was best. Therefore, Elgin concluded, he simply didn't understand that he was wrong. Because he was certainly wrong. All the facts pointed to it. Fran's intuition confirmed it, and his own senses told him she was right. So his job this morning would be to convince Winston and show him a better way to serve the comet. He did catch him at the meeting room. They arrived almost simultaneously, before anyone else got there. After the pleasantries, Elgin said, "Fran and I were talking over breakfast about debates, and how people can sometimes end up arguing for something they don't really believe." "That's right," said Winston, working with the coffee maker. "In the tradition of debating, one argues whatever position they're given, whether they agree with it or not." "So," asked Elgin, "is that what you're doing?" Winston looked up quizzically, so Elgin added, "I mean, you know that Fran's right, but you're arguing against her from duty and honor?" "By no means," said Winston. "I took the con side because I believe it to be the right side." So, Elgin had to go to work to convince him otherwise. He began by simply telling him the facts, thinking that any reasonable man would see the light if he was only shown it. When that didn't work, he became more insistent. He didn't intend to intimidate Winston. He was merely extremely earnest, but this was probably the first appearance of his famous face. The heavy brow and bulky jaw, though he was unaware of them, must have had an effect. He thought he saw the man's eyes flinch, but in the end, when Nigel showed up and the conversation was over, he had to leave not knowing if he'd had an effect, and wondering about the hostile look on Nigel's face. The discussions and arguments continued through the week, although people were more reasonable than before. Voices were still raised, but there was no more physical violence. Stanton always made sure that people knew he supported Francis. He didn't have much of a way with words, preferring to stick to the bare facts, and when pressed, he could only say that Francis had a way of knowing things, and when Elgin said she was right, given his reputation for being able to tell, that was enough for Stanton. Buzzard tried to convince people too, but with his way of talking, the only thing he could communicate was enthusiasm. Telling people, "Elgin knows. Francis is right. Elgin knows Francis is right. It's not magic," didn't convince many. There was no need for Elgin to say anything. Everyone knew what he thought. Still, he said it anyway, to anyone asked and many more who hadn't. It was unclear if his fervor was more about the fate of the comet or about his loyalty to Francis, but the result was very intense for anyone who became the focus of his attention. People started avoiding him. He didn't notice that, though. He was only interested in the people he did meet, and whether they knew what they needed to know. Francis appreciated the support, and she made sure to let them know it. With 2 days left until the second debate, the four of them enjoyed a few minutes of relaxation after yet another busy day of preparation. She personally served the tea and biscuits, even though they were within the reach of everyone, and she thanked them for their support. They objected and waved her away, of course, but you could see that it meant a lot to them. After Buzzard and Stanton left, she said to Elgin, "You really don't know how much I rely on you, do you?" "I'm just trying to help," he said. "You do help," she said, "but it's more than that." "Well," he said hesitantly, "I can tell that I do something for you. You seem to be happy when I'm around, but I don't know what it is." She thought about it. "I really do rely on you," she said. "Do you know why I tell you my ideas?" "As a sounding board, I guess, for practice." "Yes, and because you know which ones are right." That made him think. He was used to her being right. He was accustomed to the harmonious music when she spoke. Now she was saying that he not only knew when she was right, but he helped her get there? "No, I don't," he said. "Yes, you do," she insisted. "I can tell by your reaction which ideas will go somewhere." He knew when she was right, and he could tell that she was right now. "I really help you pick the right ones?" he asked. "I didn't know that." He was so cute she had to laugh. That made him smile, and that made her hug him. On the night before the second debate, there was a flashball match. The Harriers had been practicing a new pattern suggested by Elgin. The lengths of the passes and the angles between them changed by fractal amounts, so this was the play that would come to be known as Elgin's Fractal. It took a lot of practice because their brains were used to working in whole numbers. They were hoping their opponents, the Falcons, would be thrown off too, at least long enough to score a few points. They weren't disappointed. The teams were evenly matched and they played a good close game, highlighted by excellent defensive play. Near the end of the game, on what they thought might be their last clear possession of the ball, Elgin started the new pattern with a long pass. As the passes decreased in length, hit bottom and increased again, it was just unusual enough that the Falcon defenders were always a little behind the ball. It ended with Buzzard, of course, with the last long throw aimed at the shell of the sphere. Using his long body like a whip, he flung the flashball as hard as he could. It seared up through yellow to white, and half the people swore they heard a crack when it flashed. The audience knew they had seen something special, and they burst into wild applause and cheering. All the members of the Falcons and all the officials acknowledged it with thumbs up and clapping hands as well. Buzzard caught Elgin's eye, and they nodded at each other before Elgin flew out of the ball and headed for the exit. He flew over Stanton and Galatea, who had watched the game together, and they traded nods too. Other members of the audience saw him leaving, but they were hushed when they saw his face. The players and officials left the ball and congregated between it and the audience, where they were joined by members of other flashball teams and off-duty officials. There was discussion of the novel pattern the Harriers just executed, and they worked toward a consensus on how many points it was worth. They were aware that their ad hoc decision would set a precedent, so they were careful to get it right. It became obvious that there was unanimity for giving them the maximum, but someone suggested that it was worthy of more. When they announced that they would award 4 points, one more than any pattern had earned before, the audience received the decision warmly. Everyone felt it was perfect. A commotion started at the back of the crowd. Out of the hubbub could be heard snatches of single voices saying, "What's that?" and "It's Elgin." The voices rose with alarm, and someone said, "What's he doing?" People fell back from the entrance, crowding into each other, and it was soon obvious why. A large, metal, man-shaped mechanism entered the gallery. Its dimensions were about triple those of a man. That is, its overall length was 3 times Elgin's, who could be seen embedded in the center of it. Its arms and legs were 3 times the length of his, too. He wasn't so much inside it as wearing it. Its movements replicated his. It was a power-assisted mechanical extension of his body. Machines like this were used to perform some of the large tasks involved in the care and maintenance of the Comet. It was unclear why Elgin had brought it here. Some strange celebration of the flashball game, perhaps? When he turned it to walk along the wall, its settee feet clinging with solid confidence, they could see that one of its hands gripped the handle of a large, massive hammer. When he reached one of his struts, he stepped onto it and walked its length to the ball, and rising concern swelled the volume of the crowd's voice. They unconsciously pressed forward, but were held back by the flashball players and officials between them and Elgin. The metal man, in a stick-man caricature, stepped off the strut and onto the ball, where it turned around and planted its feet. The crowd calmed, but erupted again when it raised its hammer high above its head. Elgin, his face barely recognizable, looked at Stanton and Galatea. They both nodded, her face almost the mirror of Elgin's, and he brought the hammer down with destructive force on her highly polished joint. The crowd noise was mostly a moan, but it contained shrieks and cries of protest and anger. Some of them lunged forward to try to stop him, but the players deftly cut them off. Elgin hitched his machine to the left and brought the hammer down again, and again. In about 10 minutes he made 16 strikes, and worked his way around and back to where he started. Then he walked around it, inspecting his work, and tapping here and there to complete the separation. Satisfied, He turned and walked over the dome of the ball to the strut on the other side, where he spent another 10 minutes destroying his work there. As he walked the machine back up to the top of the dome, he noted with satisfaction that Buzzard was gone, as they had planned. He saw Stanton flying toward him as he stopped, and when he extricated himself they exchanged a few words. Then he flew over to join Francis and Galatea, while Stanton climbed into the metal man. A deep-throated roar built up as people realized what was about to happen, and there was a more emphatic surge forward to try to stop it. Once again the skill, training, and determination of the players and officials prevailed. Stanton shuffled the machine's feet, adjusting his position until it felt right. He looked over at his friends, ensuring the rightness of what he was about to do. He hung on to Francis's golden eyes for a long moment, and found there the conviction he was seeking. The crowd was practically sobbing as he slowly raised the hammer, but when he brought it down, and cracks shot out from the point of impact, the reaction was more a sigh of resignation and acceptance. He pounded on his creation for about 10 minutes, breaking out a big chunk and leaving a 5-meter hole in the shell. When he got out of the machine, Galatea was there for her turn. She didn't work on a single spot. Rather, she roamed over the surface, doing as much damage as she could to her polishing job before her time was up. She was followed by Van Allen and Leica, and everyone else who had worked on it, then the players and officials, and finally anyone who wanted to. It went on throughout the night and continued for days, pausing only to replenish the machine's energy packs. After 2 hours of it, Buzzard came back and let them know that his mission was successful. Stanton patted him on the back, and, while everyone congratulated him, Francis gave him a hug. Her eyes showed how she felt his pain, but he brushed it all off, insisting that it wasn't important. They all looked at each other, the hammering continuing in the background. They knew that the night was getting on, and tomorrow, with its critical debate, would come all too soon, but this felt like an important moment. No one was in a hurry to call this a day, but Elgin wanted Fran to get some rest. He said, "So, now it's down to you and Winston, eh?" Her eyes widened with realization. "Oh," she said, "I forgot to tell you. Winston won't be there." "He won't?" Elgin's flash of hope was quenched by wondering why. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Is he sick?" "No," she said. "I just found out today, and there wasn't really a good time to tell you. He took early hibernation." "Early hibernation?" said Elgin, surprised. "But why? He didn't say anything when I talked to him the other day. He seemed fine." "He told Nigel of his decision a couple of days later," said Fran. "He told him that he was feeling tired and needed some rest." "Why didn't he tell me if he was planning on going down?" said Elgin, crossly. "I wouldn't have wasted time talking to him if I'd known. I would have been talking to other people." "I don't think he knew until after he'd talked to you," said Fran, delicately. "Oh," said Elgin. "That's all right, then." He put that problem away and looked to the future. "So, who's taking his place?" Fran was envious of his ability to do that. The issue was no longer relevant, so any questions about it simply left his mind. She was more the type to get to the bottom of things, and sometimes she wished she could just drop it and walk away. "Nigel has taken over Winston's debating duties," she said. He didn't know what to think about that. Winston was good, so having him out of the picture might help their cause, but he had no idea what sort of debater Nigel would be. "Maybe I should go talk to him," he said. "No, no," said Fran hastily. "I think we should go home and rest up for tomorrow." They said good night to everyone, and went back to their apartment, where he lovingly brushed her golden fur until she fell asleep.